back to another episode of Honestly Bilal, the show for the aspiring ophthalmologist. My name is Bilal Ahmed, and I'm a fourth-year medical student at the University of Toledo for just a little while longer before I start my residency at the University of Iowa. And today I'm joined by Dr. Ravi Goel. Dr. Goel is a cataract and refractive surgeon at Wills Eye Surgical Network in New Jersey. So Dr. Goel, thank you. I know you've been kind enough to do this interview with me again after we had some technical difficulties, so I really appreciate you being patient with me. It should be a fun conversation.
My pleasure. Thanks for inviting me, Bilal. And first of all, congratulations on matching at the University of Iowa. It's a great program.
Yeah. Hopefully, learn the trick of the trade and get some tips from you. So actually, that's what I wanted to open up with here. I know, your story in ophthalmology is unique, and I know you spent time in undergrad at Yale studying economics. And how'd you end up in ophthalmology? And what are your tips for anybody who's a medical student who's applying, or for anybody who's a trainee about what you've learned over the course of your career that you would really tell a young Ravi Goel, or not that you're young, but what you tell yourself back then that you think would be some helpful advice?
Well, when I speak to medical students, I tell them all the time, I think that ophthalmology is often the poor cousin in medical school curriculum. So if you have a residency program at your medical school, you have an advantage. But for me, we didn't have a residency program at my medical school for my first 2 years. So, and this happened in ENT also. So I had a friend who quote unquote adopted a program, at another program, like, in Pennsylvania. So I think that, mentorship can be an issue for medical students who want to go into medical school. I was a medical student in the early 90s when the Clinton healthcare plan was just coming out. And there was this big push to push medical students into primary care. It was like primary care. So I felt like the mentorship wasn't great for choosing specialties at my particular medical school. I happened to have an advantage. When I was a second year resident, when I was a second year medical student, my brother was a first year ophthalmology resident.
Okay.
When I was a third year medical student, he was a second year resident. And when I was a fourth year, he was a senior resident. So I was able to sort of see be introduced to ophthalmology through him. And a lot of us have like family connections or friends connections, whatever. But I think that, like, for me, it was ophthalmology was, it was medicine, it was surgery, it was outpatient based, it was its own, little specialty. And I think that, the technology has increased exponentially, even when I was a medical student, or even since I finished residency in 2001. So it's been a great journey over the last 20 years, seeing how ophthalmology has evolved. So I think I think the most exciting time to go into ophthalmology is now. I think for rising third and fourth year medical students, interns, I envy the residents today who are learning, the best practices of today, and their surgical skills, I think, are very good. If they with these simulations and modules, et cetera, that we didn't have access to 20 years ago.
Sure. And I know that's kind of, part of something I've just learned about you just being on social media, following you on Instagram and Twitter, is that, you really like to keep yourself learning and engage with surgical videos. I know you have a sort of initiative you started with reading, one or listening to one TED Talk a day, watching one cataract surgery video a day. Talk to me about that, how long it's been going on for. Talk about that initiative that you started for yourself during COVID, and tell us about how that's been going so far.
So about 3 or 4 years ago, I was introduced to podcasts, and for whatever reason, I used to listen to PBS on the way to work and back, and I enjoyed that a great deal. And then I found a podcast called We Study Billionaires, the Investors Podcast. Mm-hmm. And these two guys, Stig and Preston, and now this guy Trey, and they basically read books of great investors and great thinkers, and they have these writers and investors and speakers as guests on their podcast. So that really opened up my mind to, as an investor, as a long-term investor, value investor, as a learner, to sort of embrace lifelong learning. When COVID hit, you go from getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning to struggling to get up at 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning when the country shut down. And I've mentioned this before, and I've mentioned this in my blog, but I became fascinated by Seinfeld, Everybody Loves Raymond, and Sopranos vignettes on YouTube. And it really is addicting. Yeah. And I remember in mid-June thinking to myself, you know what? I just spent an hour watching Soprano vignettes for no reason, of a character or whatever. I said it stops today. I said, friends would send TED talks that they thought were interesting, or you see TED talks highlighted on social media, news feeds. My friend Uday Devgan started cataractcoach.com, which I think is phenomenal. Every day he posts a cataract vignette, and every day I would say, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll look at that tomorrow.
Right.
And so in the height of COVID, in June of 2020, I said, look, forget it. I'm going to do 4 things every day. I'm going to watch a TED talk. I'm going to watch a cataract surgery video of some sort. I'm going to read a journal article, which is slowly shifted to watching Andy Lee's neuro-ophthalmology vignettes, which are phenomenal. He has 450 vignettes on YouTube on a neuro-ophthalmology concept a day.
Got it.
And I said, TED Talk, cataract surgery video, journal article, and a chapter in a book, whether it's fiction or nonfiction.
Got it.
I started that around June 14th, and now I'm on day like 320.
Yeah.
I haven't missed a day. So, but it's been really good, because I think that if you take cataract surgery an example, I'm a cataract surgeon.
Right.
Watching a video every day, and I'd recommend this for medical students, residents, whatever. If you watch a 3, 4, 5-minute video free on the internet, it gets you into that mindset every day.
Sure.
And during surgery, during a challenging case, when a challenging case comes up, like a split second, I remember a pearl from a video I watched 3 months ago, 6 months ago.
Awesome.
It's just like studying for the SATs or MCATs or whatever. Like, you have to be, it has to be, you can learn, you could be a short-term learner or a long-term learner. But I think that being in that mindset every day, TED Talks are phenomenal. But I think after I've watched 300 plus TED Talks, but in a row, one a day. I think after about 150, 200, you see like there are common themes to to what people are interested in, whatever. But I think that I've watched TED Talks and I've gone to read somebody's book, and I found more takeaway pearls in a 15-minute TED Talk than I did in the person's book. They basically, everything you needed to know was actually in the TED Talk, and you could skip reading the book.
Right.
So I hope that's a fair answer to that question.
Yeah, no, that's what I was trying to get to, is the idea of, especially for the upcoming resident or for the medical student or maybe current residents right now, even the idea of you've been practicing ophthalmology for, as you mentioned, over 20 years now, and you're still learning, you're still watching videos of cataract surgery and stuff, and to see that that's benefiting you, to see that that's something that you recall when you're actively in a case and something comes up that you can refer back to. I think that's why it's interesting to me that this is and it's almost a benefit of doing this recording later, because I remember when we did the episode before, you were on like maybe 150 of your initial blog, and now 300 in, and I think now the benefits of that are starting to show even for you, and I think that's what we should all kind of carry away from that experience. And again, even with TED Talks and everything else, I think it's also, you got to keep things outside medicine also growing too. Otherwise, it's so easy to get so narrow and focus on growth in one way that you miss out on everything else. And I love a good TED Talk anytime. I think I do think that the book kind of sets up the TED Talk speaker to where they kind of get that platform after the book. So maybe there's a precedent there. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it can be a little bit of both. You can yeah, exactly. You can write a great book and then do a TED Talk,
right.
Or you can do a TED Talk which then turns into a book.
Yeah,
I think it's Simon Sinek who has, I think he's a top 3 in TED Talks. I think his TED Talk preceded his TED Talk was actually a TEDx talk. It was there was TED, which is the meeting in Canada usually, post-COVID or pre-COVID, and then they have TEDx, which is or smaller meetings,
right.
Around the country. I think his was a TEDx talk, which is great, sort of. But a lot of these TED Talks are filled with pearls. you got to watch them a couple times. Some of them fall flat. Some of you are like, "What? That was a waste." I want my 5 minutes back. But I think it is a good journey to take. The pearl I would give to medical students and residents, especially when you become a surgeon, as we like to say, the only surgeon who has no complications is the one that doesn't operate. So they talk about learning curve, steep learning curve, etc. But I think that certainly within the subspecialties of ophthalmology, if you're a visual learner, and I think you figure out that I'm more of a visual learner. I can't read an article about how to do a suture
Sure.
versus how to throw a suture, throw a stitch, versus watching somebody's video. Like the Mayo, the Mayo faculty has an incredible multi-part series on YouTube on how to on corneal suturing. You know, so I'd recommend that. I mean, and Chris Rapuano at Wills has some good videos on suturing. But basically, I think that like when you're in residency, if you have a white cataract coming up, you have a complicated case.
Right.
Now on the internet from colleagues around the world, and this is the beauty of ophthalmology. You know, what you see is what you get. You know, so you can watch, you know, 20, 30 cataracts surgeries of a particular complicated case you're going to do, you know, easily from the comfort of your home or on your phone or, you know, on your iPad or whatever. So I think we didn't have that 20 years ago. I used to ask friends to send me their CD-ROMs. I have a whole box of shoebox CD-ROMs, or you know, or VHS, not VHS tapes, but like, you know, but I still have my VHS tapes from residency, which I haven't. Maybe I'll donate them to the Museum of the Eye. You know.
Yeah, you need the player. That's a more important thing. You can't have the tapes, not the player. I don't know what the value is.
Exactly. It has no value, I'm sure, for me anyway. For the Academy, they'll be like, what was that? Well, that guy was a clown. Yeah. So.
So even with you know, like everything you've been doing with social media, you mentioned your blog and how you're keeping up with that on daily thing to keep that discipline's great. But I know that you've given talks on social media, you know, creating a personal brand and protecting your online reputation. And we actually talked about this before as well. And I thought that was really some great pros that you gave last time. But you know, do you mind sharing some stuff that you've picked up along the way in some of your previous talks that you've shared with other audiences about, you know, really being, you know, maintaining that sort of brand on social media, how to, you know, do it in a way that's reflective of a professional career that doesn't hurt you, but at the same time you're making it grow and it's actually worth your time and investment in that you know, sort of venture.
So every Thanksgiving I would Google my name, my first name, my last name, MD, and I find these review sites, and then you could see what patients were rating, how they were rating you. And it can become overwhelming when you first discover that when you search your first name and your last name, especially if you have a particular name, like in like a unique name, you know, an MD or DO, on the first two pages of Google search, often 50, 60% of the search results on the first two pages of Google are these physician review sites. And they're just selling advertising. Everyone's in the advertising game. Facebook's in the advertising game. Google's in the advertising game. Most of the valuations for all these companies comes from advertising. So all these physician review sites are using your name, your image, and your brand to sell advertising, right? Or they figure out some other way to like make a health system sign up for a subscription so that they could feature their doctors or whatever. So it's all about money, right? So, but the point being is that patients do look at that information. They look at your physician review sites. They look at your LinkedIn profile. They look at your Twitter feed. They look at your Facebook profile, if it's public or private. You know, if you have a professional page. So the essential pearl I have for residents and medical students is that sort of be cognizant of what your social media presence is. You know, I know of college students who are applying for internships to do research in a development office, and you know the staff looks at their social media pages, you know, before they give them interviews, or it may determine whether or not you get an interview. So I think, especially for for residency, and you know what, you can build up a reputation, positive or negative, on social media. And so that's number one. But if you when you're out in practice, you know, you're a member of the community.
Right.
So no matter what you post, no matter what I post, I'm comfortable with a patient seeing it, my wife seeing it, you know, a member of the board of medical examiners seeing it, you know, or like some, you know, controlling legal authority, you know, whatever, back in the Al Gore days. But like, you know, you have to sort of be comfortable with your presence, because it does affect your reputation, and affects your income. Quite honestly, it can affect your practice, etc. So, because you have to think about medical school, residency, you know, junior years in practice, you know, longer practice. You're kind of on railroad tracks, right? Once you enter medical school, if you're an MD candidate, there's the MD candidate and there's the MD PhD candidate, right? The MD candidate gets on the train, and goes from the first stop to the second stop to the third stop to the fourth stop to residency to
Mhm.
practice, right? And as long as you don't curse out the dean,
Yeah.
and as long as you pass your exams,
Uh,
you know, what do you call the person who graduates last in medical school?
doctor, right? Yeah.
Doctor, right? So, and I think the MD PhD students, they get on the train also, but like they go to the first stop, the second stop,
Yeah.
they get off the train for a couple of years, and then they get back on the train, or they do like an MPH or an MBA or whatever. You sort of get on and off the train. But I think that medical education is this sort of this. You have to think of it long term, right? Like because now the internet has an infinite memory, right?
Right.
Even your tweets. If you tweet something, I think Twitter keeps it for so long or whatever. But there are websites that crawl that data.
Mm.
So that data is always out there. You can always find if you dig deep enough in the internet, you could find what you tweeted 5-7 years ago about something silly.
Yeah.
So I think that I think that for so I got into so what happened was that I started doing this for myself,
Mhm.
and then the academy had so it's called something called a hearing, which the academy mid-year forum was in April a few weeks ago. It's the second time it's been virtual.
Mhm.
Anyone could have attended it for free if you were an academy member. But the academy has this thing called a hearing, where like for 45 minutes or an hour, they have a specialized session. And 10 years ago, they had a session on social media and physician ratings, and they had somebody from Angie's List, Medicare, Reputation.com. I was a panelist. Tamara Fountain, who's now the president, she was a panelist. Sort of. I think Rob Melendez was a panelist. So it was a bunch of us. But I just did it through my own interest, and then it kind of like snowballed, right? You become known for certain interests in ophthalmology, and then you become an expert. And when I was a resident in Baltimore, I remember I was a Greater Baltimore Medical Center, which then merged into Hopkins, and then it spun off again, and then it's now part of the University of Maryland's program, I think. But my point is that there was a faculty member at Johns Hopkins at Wilmer who was like the world's expert in like this childhood, genetic disorder,
Mm.
and she was invited to like Turkey and India and China and Singapore and all across the United States. Whenever there was I forget what the disorder was, but whenever there was a talk on this disorder, she had to be on the panel, right? Like so we have to have so and so. And I remember her speaking to the residents one day, and she gave a very good life lesson. I remember because it was 20 plus years ago. She said, become an expert in something.
Mm.
Like like you're the expert in like interviewing. I've seen your list. You interviewed Ross Lackenpaul, who was my senior resident before me, but we'll leave that aside. You obviously interviewed your uncle Ike Ahmed. I know you pretend like he's not your uncle. What's that?
I wish he was my uncle. That'd be crazy.
Exactly. So but you can become known for certain things, and I think that or you could be as I tell in my talk also, like there are plenty of colleagues who really could care less about social media, who don't, and that's fine too. You have your research interests, your clinic interests, whether or not you want to do research or advocacy or whatever, and you sort of and you develop those interests. But I think that for you can help one patient at a time, or if there does become an issue, like this whole myopia issue that's going to happen internationally. I think it's good. I think the academy is going to take it on, WHO, etc. I think that is how you can sort of advocate for patients,
Mm.
and advocate for the profession, and really, and I've embraced the academy's mission of protecting sight, right? The academy's mission is protecting sight and empowering lives, and 3 years after they announced that mission, I figured out that no one secured the domain name protecting sites, so that became my domain name. But I mean, I think that it's been a fun journey for me.
Very
Feel
nice.
privileged.
No, I was just, and you touched on advocacy and your work with the academy the past few years. I know that you've also been working with the American Medical Association, AMA. You've been involved with the academy since you were in the Young Ophthalmology Committee. You've even won the Senior Achievement Award, and you've been still involved to this day. And you mentioned Mid-Year Forum just a few weeks ago that was virtual. So, what are some takeaways that you have for incoming trainees like myself for getting involved in advocacy, how to really find something that you feel strongly about, feel passionate about, and what are some some key points to really to take away to be advocating in the proper direction in a way that's responsible, ethical, and you feel like you're actually representing your profession the right way.
Yeah, I think no matter where, to bring that full circle, in 1999, I was first or second year resident, and the state of Oklahoma allowed optometrists to do laser surgery in the state of Oklahoma.
Mm.
I remember getting the weekly circular, like the Ocular Surgery News, or Ophthalmology Times, and thinking to myself, this will never affect me. I'm not going to Oklahoma. I'm going to be in New Jersey. 20 years later, you're about to hit a dozen states where ophthalmology or patients can be affected by non-surgeons performing various procedures. And so I think so my advice to medical students and residents, which is a little different. Medical students, I'd recommend, if you have the interest. And I have family members who are in medicine who didn't have the interest, which is fine. But like the AMA is, my personal bias is my first AMA meeting was June of my first year in medical school.
Mm.
The AMA I think is a great networking opportunity and a great incubator to become a leader in any of the subspecialties you go into. Because if you have an interest in advocacy or doing like the JAMA journal for the medical students, whatever, like all these different opportunities, as a medical student, it's a great networking opportunity if you have a passion for that. If it's not your interest, then don't worry about it. When you're a resident, many programs hopefully will send a resident to the mid-year forum one of the 3 years, either the first year, second year, or third year.
Right.
And if you have an interest in going, you should go.
Yeah.
And it's usually funded by the program or funded by a state society. You're asked to give a presentation when you go back to your residency to your other residents on what you did.
Sure.
And you could sort of, and there are PowerPoint presentations that are like you could edit somebody else's PowerPoint presentation, give a presentation. But my view is that your residency and your fellowship is a lot of education, learn about advocacy. 2, 3, 4 years later, there may be an issue in your state that will affect your ability
to
be a retina surgeon who does injections, or or glaucoma specialist who, if you're dealing with somebody else's laser complications, whatever. So I think that you can learn advocacy skills through, again, a long process.
Mm.
The Academy has a very good introductory program, and then they have this. They have when you go to the mid-year forum, typically on the Friday of it, they have a young ophthalmology program.
Mm-hmm.
And even at the Academy meeting, there are young ophthalmology programs, and there's young ophthalmology info newsletter, and the Academy has these contests for iWiki, like the best iWiki article. So there are like amazing opportunities for quote unquote motivated junior colleagues. I don't think, and as I like to say, you're not the future of ophthalmology. You're part of ophthalmology. You're not the future of medicine. You are a part of medicine, right? No matter what stage you're in.
Mm.
So I think that you can build your own niche and your own brand within those areas. I mean, I've been very interested in the medical students because of COVID, I think,
Right.
who are building their social media brands, like they're announcing who they are, and again, like, it's interesting to see, because 2-3 years ago, I got a lot more followers who are medical students interested in ophthalmology, which I think is great. But again, it's been interesting to sort of follow and to see how you have to, people who have a passion for ophthalmology, because I think that not only for a passion for ophthalmology, but some people might have like a passion for, like there's an article about Steve Charles, who's in Retina Today, who's like the famous retina surgeon, and he's like, he knew in his first year of medical school or something that he wanted to go into retina surgery. I'm like some people just have it. So some people have that sort of. I know my glaucoma attending in residency I think she knew in first grade that she wanted to become a glaucoma
Wow,
specialist.
that is. I don't think there's anyone else in the world who goes that early, but that's
Yeah.
then yeah.
How do you know in first grade unless like unless you have like a lineage or there's some issue like some family issue? So it's it's an interesting it's interesting. I still think the ophthalmology is the best specialty. I think hands down.
Well, that's great. Well, hey, Dr. Goel, I mean, I appreciate you giving tips on everything from your story for medical students, what they can take away from that, from social media, for your blog on protectingsight.com, everything you've done for advocacy with the AMA and the American Academy of Ophthalmology. I mean, you have been representative of a lot of things that I aspire to be, and a lot of others I'm sure do as well. So I want to thank you for taking the time to doing this again with me and to, sit down and tell me some new pearls and same ones I feel like a lot of people can learn some insights from. So looking forward to meeting you in person someday at mid-year forum or at the academy or at another meeting. And until then, take care.
Bilal, I wish you great success in your future endeavors. I think you're gonna be a great colleague in the field.
Thank you so much. All right.